Hello and welcome to Man Games. This is the podcast show, is the Man
And the wife.
podcast. So today is a little bit of a different episode. We are reviewing the 24 documentary on the WWE Network called The Show Must Go On. So it's based on Wrestlemania 36. Obviously it was meant to take place at the Tampa Bay Ravens Bay. Is it Ravens Bay or Raymond's Bay Stadium?
Raymond James Stadium.
All right.
Yeah, Raymond James Stadium.
That's where Mania 36 was meant to be held, but then when the pandemic hit, it got taken to the PC, the Performance Center. So the show starts off with Triple H in the ring, talking to the officials and the superstars, how everything's getting shut down, really.
Yeah, it's like kind of giving a big pep talk, really, isn't he?
Yeah. You see like a press conference of them there at the Tampa Bay Stadium saying how big everything's going to be like next year. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they sort of talk about like the builds.
Yeah, even Hogan's there talking about the build to Mania 36.
Yeah, they mention it's a bit further on in the program, but they do mention that they were planning it for 14 months. Like, it's quite the substantial amount of time to be planning something for it to be cancelled 14 days beforehand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crazy.
The show, Rhea Ripley walking around the stadium just 4 weeks before Mania.
Yeah.
And then,
like, expecting to be there. Like, they're obviously filming, weren't they, for 24?
For this documentary, but not...
Yeah, not this one.
Not this one, yeah. So... when we decided to do this podcast about this documentary, I did think it looked more into detail on how things changed, but considering the show, it's called The Show Must Go On, it kind of was the backstory. The story was more still the matches and things.
I think they kind of still kept to what the Wrestlemania 24 would have been had it been a normal Wrestlemania.
Yeah.
And just sort of gave it a fancy title.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it didn't really talk a lot about how they adapted the matches. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but they didn't talk about the Boneyard match.
Yeah, no, well, there was a few matches they didn't really talk about. They didn't really talk about Edge and Randy Orton's Last Man Standing match, which they used the whole Performance Center really in that match. So
yeah, there was matches that they could have talked about more that were actually adapted. Do you know what I mean? Like, some matches weren't adapted as much as others because they could just go on normally, or all the competitors could be there and whatnot. But
yeah, they didn't even really go into a lot of detail of Roman Reigns not wanting to
be there.
But we'll get onto that a bit more later on in the show.
So yeah, as you were saying, the first superstar that's on is Rhea Ripley, and she's talking about like watching WWE in Australia when she was growing up, and how she used to record it and then binge watch it because obviously.
It's on in Australia. It's on at like 12 o'clock on a Tuesday.
When you're at school.
Afternoon, so when you're at school, yeah. That's when Raw would be on, with the time difference and things.
Yeah. And then she goes on to talk about like she started wrestling at 16. I can't remember the company that she was wrestling for in South Australia.
Riot something, I think.
I don't know, but and then when she was 20, she got her first tryout, and they said to her, "Oh, we'll contact you, but it might be a while. Like, we just don't know when we're."
You might not even hear back.
Yeah, sort of thing. And so she wasn't expecting a lot. She said that within 4 days she got a
callback for the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah, well, she didn't know it was a Mae Young Classic, did she? So she got there, and then they're like, "Oh, you're in the Mae Young Classic. Oh, can you sign these chairs? Oh, can you do this?" And she was like, "Wow, what?" Like, thought I was just coming to the Performance Center. So.
Yeah, you do see the change in Rhea Ripley as she was like a young girl into like this
badass,
yeah. In the first Mae Young Classic, she got compared to Charlotte Flair a lot, didn't she?
Yeah.
And then the second Mae Young Classic, she completely changed her character so she would no longer get compared to anyone else. She didn't want to be the next Charlotte Flair. She wanted to be the first Rhea Ripley.
I think that sort of was like a real testament to like a character in the sense of like a personality and whatnot. Like, she wasn't happy just flagging off somebody else. She was like, no, I want to be myself, and I want to be and like being able to adapt. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's really good.
I think a lot of people wouldn't do that. They're just like, all right, then this is me, so I'm going to keep going or whatever. She's like, no, yeah, like I'm just gonna. She's evolving all the time to ensure that she stays relevant.
Yeah, she does mention she ended 2018 as the NXT UK champion, and then she ended 2019 the NXT champion, women's champion, obviously that is.
Yeah, crazy good though.
So then you see like clips of all the sports centres and things like talking about how football's cancelled, NBA's cancelled, everything's getting cancelled because of the pandemic and things.
It's funny. Did you think that this should have been cancelled? Like with it,
I think at the time I did, but actually watching this now, I can see why people wanted it to still go on.
Yeah.
Just with like, because obviously this was like at the worst point in the pandemic when this was going on, really, wasn't it? This is when everyone was like in a proper lockdown, most of the world.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to put it on for people. Well, so they say, they're saying they wanted to put it on, to get people's mind off the pandemic and give them something to enjoy to watch. But that could be just WWE putting themselves over, really.
Yeah, it could be like, I mean, look back in retrospect and you think, oh, like nothing major like happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, there was no like massive outbreak then at that time in WWE or anything. And so I guess it had no repercussions. But I think, was it necessary to go on? Do you know what I mean? Could we have done without it? I don't know. I think it's
Well, it's not an essential.
Oh, of course not. Sports, I suppose.
Sport, yeah.
Well, anything.
I think they've been very lucky how they've been able to continue doing shows as much as they have.
Yeah, because you think about like other sports would like to cancel.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess because WWE, all these all wrestling, I suppose, promotions continue, didn't they? I know.
Yeah. Impact, AW.
I guess because they don't interchange, do they? Like, I guess normal sport teams interchange every time.
Well, I suppose
They create bubbles, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Like in, say, a soccer match or a football match, there's 11 people on a team. That's 22 people playing one game, whereas in a wrestling match, there can just be 2 wrestlers, obviously, in the ring. So, yeah, Triple H says they have to make something out of nothing, so they go from, they're going to be at the Tampa Bay to the Performance Center. That is where WrestleMania is going to be. Bruce Pritchard says that this is going to be a WrestleMania that people are always going to talk about because it is, well, obviously, because there's never going to be another WrestleMania like it. You'd like to hope. Yeah,
well, I put a note, which just quite further on my notes, but I'm going to say it now. And like, obviously, everyone was like, especially for like Braun and for Drew McIntyre and everything, that like it's bad for them. Well, it's upsetting for them that they won their titles with no crowd. They didn't have that sort of atmosphere and whatnot. But then I was thinking, like, it'll always be a memorable WrestleMania. Like, people will always remember. Do you know what I mean? Like, it will never just blend into the background. It's like, oh, was it WrestleMania this, or which one was he at? Or
yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, it'll be like, that's the one that he won, and that was that. Do you know what I mean? It'll always be remembered as like the WrestleMania no crowd. And he won the title through a pandemic, and it's so in some respects it was good.
Going back to the socially distanced wrestling and things like that, I remember listening to Eric Young on another podcast. He was saying in Impact Wrestling that they only get the wrestlers in for their certain segment, and as soon as they're done, they sent home. They're not
hanging around
things, and they still have no fans or anything.
Yeah.
Whereas WWE
don't have got fans.
They've got the Thunderdome now, but they did.
They used to have like the.
They used to have like NXT people in the crowd, and NXT now has a crowd.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh.
AEW have 1,000 people in attendance, I believe.
Yeah.
But
you can see them in like the little groups, can't you?
Very social distance, and then they have their own like staff in the crowd as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, out of all the companies, it looks like from what you hear, Impact Wrestling seems to be taking the pandemic more seriously than the other companies, and obviously Impact Wrestling is a smaller company as well.
Probably couldn't afford the lawsuits.
Maybe.
Just yeah.
So one of the next things you see is Drew McIntyre. He's filming an advert for BT Sport in the UK or in Scotland, and then they realise what's going on in the world and say, we think we need to get you back.
Yeah, they just pull him from the commercial, don't they? They're flying back over. And then he said he was pissed off with the announcement that was made about WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Because
you're gonna be though, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I totally get how you're annoyed. You think you're gonna get your moment after 10 years, and then it's like, oh, well, you are, but there's no one gonna be there to see it. Well, not that they're not gonna see it, but you're not gonna get that reaction, that moment that you're expecting. Do you know what I mean? So there's a big reflection on his journey, isn't it? So how when he first came in, what year was it?
2009.
Yeah.
He debuted. Vince McMahon announced him to the ring, saying he was the future champion. I do think he had been on an episode of SmackDown before this, but not as a main person, more of a backup, as a backup tag team partner or something.
Yeah.
Because I had seen him before. He debuted before on SmackDown, but in a smaller role.
And it sort of goes on for him. It shows how he thought he was going to be the man, and he won the Intercontinental Championship
from John Morrison.
Yeah.
And then next thing is in 3MB.
And what a fall that was, and then how he gets released in 2014.
Yeah, we were actually aware when this happened. We were staying at a lodge, and I remember you went to get some drinks, and I connected to the internet to see if anything had happened, and all these people had been released, and I was like, oh, crap. I remember Drew McIntyre was the one name out of all the names I couldn't believe had been released. I mean, there was quite a few on the list.
I can't remember this.
Yeah.
I think, where were we?
Griffin Forrest.
Oh.
Yeah.
I obviously don't remember quite much. Oh, I do remember, actually.
Yeah.
I do remember. So sorry, just come to me then. Yeah, so then obviously he gets released, he then goes and starts training again, and he's thinking right, how can I improve, how can I get better, and he starts getting more jacked, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was wrestling in the UK ICW. He did some 5-star wrestling stuff. He went to Impact Wrestling as well.
And he was saying I had lots to learn, not just in the ring but out the ring as well. And then he called William Regal, and went back to NXT.
Yeah, the 1st of April 2017, Drew McIntyre signs with NXT. He was only there for a short while, really. I mean, he didn't really need to be there for a long time, but then April 16, 2018, he was back on Raw. I remember being very excited when he returned onto Raw, because it was kind of a bit unexpected. Dolph Ziggler, I think it was in the draft, Dolph Ziggler was there, and then Drew was his partner.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, there's going to be good things with Drew McIntyre, and then he kind of didn't really do a lot with him. They didn't really capitalise on him as soon as they should have done, really. Because we were at SummerSlam 2018, and he was just in Ziggler's corner on the outside.
Yeah.
He didn't even have a match.
That's crazy.
But he did do some better things. He did, obviously, he teamed with Shane McMahon to take on Roman Reigns and The Undertaker at Extreme Rules. That was a big moment for him. He wrestled Roman Reigns at Mania 35, a match that probably no one remembers. But he did do that. So the next thing they show him winning the Royal Rumble in 2020. Claymoring top Lesnar over the top rope. And then he eliminates Roman Reigns at the end to win the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
So yeah, then after that, he explains how angry he was that he's gonna be at WrestleMania, but no fans. But then when he stops and thinks about it, he realizes what situation the world is in.
Yeah, it's kind of bigger than you, isn't it? Almost.
Yeah, it's more important than.
Yeah.
But before we go on, I'd just like to say, if this is your first time watching TheMan Games, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you are enjoying what you listen to, please hit that like button. There is plenty of other podcasts on the channel, so make sure you go back and check them out. So next up the show, a little bit of clips from the cinematic match between Cena and Bray Wyatt. Cena says that it took 7.5 hours to film it, which actually is quite a short time to film something like that.
Yeah, especially if you think about, now I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about the Boneyard match and how long it took them to record that, and I'm sure it was 12 hours or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and filming all like through the night, weren't they?
Yeah, literally like all night.
That would have been Gallows and Anderson on Chris Van Vliet's podcast. I would have thought you'd have heard that.
Yeah, I think it might have been. And you think, well, that was like all night, and I feel like this was more. I feel like the cinematic match, the what was it, Firefly Funhouse match, was definitely more creative in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, it was more creative in a way, but
they had to do more changes and more cuts. And
in the Boneyard match, though, Undertaker smashes his arm open straight away, doesn't he? He puts his arm through
they do actually show that clip on this
documentary,
but they don't actually talk about it at all, do they? It's just that we have context that we know that. But if you haven't watched or you haven't listened to that podcast on Chris Van Vliet, then you wouldn't have a clue, would you?
No.
So it's kind of like, what was the point of that? Like showing that segment.
Yeah.
I mean, that clip.
Yeah. After that, you see Elias. He's saying he's surprised that they managed to fit the WrestleMania sign into the Performance Center because the WrestleMania sign is that big.
Yeah.
Then you see them doing the temperature checks and things like backstage of the wrestlers to make sure they're not showing COVID symptoms. Which is really good. But the one no one was like social. There was a lot of people like hugging and things like that, and I did kind of think, do you really need to be doing this? Like,
yeah, I did see there was Lacey Evans, and there was I don't know whose hair she was brushing, but she was brushing.
Like Mandy Rose's.
Yeah,
I mean, it might not have been, but
and then the makeup artist had a mask on, but nobody else did. It's like, well,
yeah.
From there, does it go into Braun Strowman?
Yeah, it goes on to Braun Strowman. He's now facing Goldberg at WrestleMania. It was meant to have been Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns didn't want to wrestle, basically, because he's got twin children at home, just being newborns, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all.
Braun talks about how he took a 21-hour drive home, didn't he? And then he got home and there was a phone call, like, oh, there's a jet coming to get you.
Yeah, things have changed.
You'll be back in, I think he went to bed at 2 o'clock, got in the morning, got in the jet at 9 a.m. and was back, and then he got there and they were like, oh, so you're going to wrestle for Goldberg. And he was like, oh, wow. And sort of Braun says like about how he totally understands Roman's decision not to go and wrestle, because obviously putting your kids first is like the main thing, and
yeah, sure is.
Twins is.
It's a bit easier for someone who's financially able to do that.
Oh yeah, obviously, but no one can blame him for what he did.
Like, oh yeah, no, but it's not like he has to worry about paying his mortgage or things like that.
I suppose. Anyway, I feel like you got really touchy about that. Like,
well, no, but like I'm not taking anything away from him, but like it's alright for famous people to say, "Well, I'm not going to work." It's like, well, like he could eat. Like if Vince had spat his dummy out and said, "Well, you're fired," like he could be making money 12 different ways from home.
I suppose, yeah, good point.
But anyway, moving on. So Braun Strowman gets a little bit teary talking about how he was bullied as a child about his size.
Oh, this was heartbreaking. He was like, how much he used to get bullied. He said he didn't understand why, because he was such a friendly person, and then like when he figured out why, he was like, he was just getting so upset. And like he talks about like how much it affected him emotionally. You know what I mean? And like you just think someone's so big and like strong, and he just has this like persona that you think he wouldn't be affected by something so silly, I suppose. It's not silly, is it? But like, you think he wouldn't take into other people's words, but he
wouldn't be as emotional because he's such a big guy.
Yeah. So he gets into weightlifting. He joined a gym. I can't remember the person who said he got him into it, and sort of that was like his release, and that sort of helped him get through that. And he started to go into like competitions and winning and whatnot. And he ends up meeting Mark Henry at one of the competitions. I can't remember which one.
Was it Arnold Classic? Was it,
I think so, yeah. And Mark Henry puts his neck on the line, doesn't he? Like pays for Braun's ticket to go to WWE to try out, and says like, "Look, Vince, this kid's got it."
Yeah.
Which I didn't know actually.
I didn't know that Henry had done that. I knew he'd only had a few matches before he went onto Raw. So he'd only had 8 matches before he debuted on Raw as the Black Sheep.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Then it shows a clip of him winning the IC title. I completely forgot he won the IC title.
Yeah.
I think he beat Shinsuke Nakamura for it, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Just because, yeah, clearly not that memorable of a win. Memorable of a win, even. So then it starts to look at Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens fought Seth Rollins at this WrestleMania. Shows his debut on Raw, May 18, 2015. There's not a lot of moments on Raw these days that are like, wow, that was a good moment. But this really, when Kevin Owens debuted on Raw, that really was a good moment.
Yeah.
He pop-up powerbombs John Cena, stands on his United States Championship and holds the NXT title over his head.
Even I remember that.
Yeah, what a good moment that was.
So he starts talking about that, like when he went to the stadium, a few weeks before,
for a truck rally or something. Or was it monster trucks?
Monster truck rally, yeah. And he saw that there was like the big ship at the stadium, the big pirate ship, and he was like, right, I want to jump off that. Like that's what I want to do when it comes to WrestleMania. And then obviously it gets cancelled. It was absolutely good that he couldn't do this. And then he gets to the performance center and he sees that they've brought in the WrestleMania sign. He's like, right, I'm jumping off that.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I thought that was really funny. How he like knows he wants to do it. But then he goes on to talk about like his WrestleMania performances. And at WrestleMania 33, Kevin Owens says that like Vince wasn't happy with him. And you see that clip of like him going back to Gorilla and he's like, oh, are we good? And Vince says no. But why? Why was Vince not happy with his match?
He just didn't like the way the match went. I don't think, because he was in his 365 documentary thing. But they didn't really go into a lot of detail why he didn't like it. They just like, it's probably just a Vince thing. Which, originally it was meant to be KO and Jericho for the Universal title. That was meant to have been like the headline match for Mania until Goldberg said he was going to come back, and then that's when plans changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, he talks about WrestleMania 32, his first WrestleMania. He loved it. He was in the ladder match with Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
How special it was. Then he obviously what we just talked about. He said WrestleMania 33 wasn't a high point because Vince didn't like the match. From what I remember, the match it was all right. I don't think it was like an outstanding match. I remember Jericho pinning him and KO putting his finger on the rope. I thought that was a pretty cool spot that not seen before. And then he talks about WrestleMania 34. So it's him and Sami Zayn against Shane McMahon and the returning Daniel Bryan.
He said he really enjoyed Daniel Bryan's entrance, didn't he?
Yeah, that was his high point there.
And then he wasn't even on the card on WrestleMania 35.
No.
And then obviously
I think it's because they didn't have anything for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it shows Mojo Rawley on SmackDown. He's getting hyped up because the Gronk is coming in to host WrestleMania. You see, he's like slapping Michael Cole on the ass.
Oh yeah, Mojo.
And it just made me think of American Pie: The Wedding, where there's that the stripper woman.
Oh yeah.
And she whips Harold, which is Jim's father-in-law, future father-in-law. He's like, oh. And his wife's like, you liked it. And it's like, I meant how. And that's totally what Michael Cole was like this. He was loving getting spanked by Mojo Rawley. He had a right cheeky little smile on his face.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah, so I was like listening to like Gronk talk about like how he used to watch wrestling and blah blah blah, and they all said that like how massive fans they are. But he just seems like a genuinely nice guy, doesn't he? Like I don't know, he just seems really sort of I don't know, I've never seen Gronk really unless like obviously at WrestleMania I saw him and then like in the crowds and whatnot. But like
I've seen him on a documentary before about it's about a football player, I can't remember who it was now there. And they were trying the interview was trying to instigate that they're taking like stuff they shouldn't be taking, and he was just proper shooting down this person. And I think he ends up just like walking out because he wouldn't take crap.
Yeah, it just seems like from this tiny little clip and segment, I always sort of got the impression from being in like the parts he's been in that it was, I don't know, he's a famous football player, so he's a bit of a, I don't want to say knob, but obviously I don't know, but he just seemed
a bit big-headed, don't you?
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was just so genuine and nice and down to earth and that. But I do enjoy the scene where they show that Gronk is practicing how to jump off the platform, and Vince just gets up and does it. Like, how old's Vince?
No, yeah, I think we've spoke about this before. He's 70 plus.
Yeah, and then he jumps 10 foot off a platform onto a thing. Like, but then the way they were sort of showing this in the documentary, I thought that Gronk was going to hurt himself. So when he didn't, I was a little bit disappointed.
Oh.
But like, just like the thought that like Vince was going to do it like ease, and then like Gronk was going to fall off and like break his elbow or something. I don't know.
Okay, so they do show a clip of the Gronk at WrestleMania 33. Do you remember that at all?
Yes, when it goes in and helps Mojo to win the under the giant battle royale.
Yeah. So you remember when he jumped over the barricade?
Yeah, there was some woman in security thought.
Yeah, like he grabs him and pins him up against the barricade.
Yeah, she didn't get the memo.
No.
Too funny.
So yeah, next up they're showing just like clips of WrestleMania, and I was seeing these clips and I thought, I actually forgot that. Like Aleister Black fought Bobby Lashley. I'm not really sure why. That was just a bit of a random match on the card, but I remember seeing that and be like, oh, that was a match at WrestleMania. Like,
yeah, like that's the thing. There's some things that are really memorable in this WrestleMania, and then there's some things you're like, oh, that happened.
Yeah, like they showed no clip at all of Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. They fought for the IC title. There was no bit at all. I don't think I saw Sami Zayn or Daniel Bryan's documentary at all. And they had a match. It's
funny that they can talk about WrestleMania but not talk about everything in WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Do you mean
it's like the focus on certain bits.
Yeah.
Like the main focus was, well, it was Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar, really.
Yeah, and then a little bit of Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair.
Well, yeah. To be fair, they're probably the three most focused things.
Yeah.
But like really, Undertaker and AJ could have been more focused on. Fight for match could have been more focused on. Even like Edge and Orton, they had the longest WrestleMania match ever. In front of no fans, and they hardly showed anything to do with that.
Yeah. So there's another clip of Braun. He's talking again about what it means to him to winning the title, and he's literally just like the definition of a big fan giant, isn't he? Like he gets emotional again, and like just watching his documentaries made me fall in love with him. I just think, oh, he's just so lovely, and he just like, I don't know, got a newfound respect for him.
That's nice.
Yeah. I did find the last 15 minutes of this documentary a little bit boring. I kind of felt like it got a bit repetitive.
Yeah, it was just bulking out to an hour, weren't they?
It was like the last, it should have been a 45-minute show, because the last 15 minutes was sort of them going over what they'd already shown us. Really, like just sort of summing it up in a very long conclusion that could have been done in 3 minutes, but they did it in 15.
Because I actually thought this was only like a 45-minute documentary, and I paused it, and I think we were 38 minutes in or something. I thought, how can this go like another 20 plus minutes? That
is how.
Yeah.
They do a 15-minute conclusion.
So you see Seth Rollins' entrance at Mania. I do really like his attire that he had for Mania. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens saying that he really loved his match with Seth Rollins. He did dive off the WrestleMania sign through the announcer's table. That was a cool spot. Obviously, it's just a shame that there was no one there to really see it.
Yeah.
Then you see clips of Goldberg and Braun Strowman. So Strowman beats Goldberg for the championship, and then you see him backstage with the title belt, and he's saying to Triple H, thanks for believing in me and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going back to your point.
Yeah.
Very nice. So the Firefly Funhouse match next, to start showing a few more clips of that. It just made me remember that's probably one of the highlights of WrestleMania.
I was just thinking, I really want to watch that back actually.
Yeah, we've never actually watched any of this year's WrestleMania back in full,
which is very unusual. Usually we do.
Like when I was a kid and there used to be a pay-per-view, I used to probably watch that pay-per-view like throughout the week again multiple times. Whereas like now,
no, you haven't got time now.
Well, yeah, I don't have time now, but.
Do you think if you did have the time, do you think you would though?
Maybe. Like, after I watched John Moxley and Eddie Kingston from Full Gear, I kept thinking, I need to watch it again, I want to watch it again, I still haven't watched it again. So yeah, something I need to do.
When you get the time.
I get the time. So Cena says he loves doing this, which surprised me actually. I thought maybe like it wouldn't be kind of like Cena's thing really. Even though he's like a movie star and things like that, I was a bit worried that Cena wouldn't get it, but he seemed to really, enjoy doing it.
Didn't he say like he felt vulnerable or something because I feel like it was like the most creative thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
And so he felt like he's kind of putting himself out there.
Yeah. So then they start showing clips of Rhea Ripley and Charlotte. So, but my favourite thing about WrestleMania was probably both cinematic matches, the Boneyard match and the Firefly match, but actual like in-ring wrestling, Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley was my favourite match of that WrestleMania. I do remember that.
It was a really good match, and I mean, it always annoys me that Charlotte Flair has to win at WrestleMania. Well, not always win, but
yeah, I know what you mean. They wanted to be like a father though with like 16 title reigns, don't they?
Yeah, it drives me crazy though.
Well, yeah, it's like
can't you put over the new stars?
You need to be like the first Charlotte Flair, not the next Ric Flair.
Yeah.
So why, copy what he's done, kind of thing. But yeah, anyway.
But yeah, you see, Rhea gets upset, like emotional at the end of the match as well. I think for a lot of the superstars, they weren't expecting this WrestleMania to be emotional because a lot of them get emotional at the end of their matches. I think because they had that moment after they win or they lose or whatever, because there's not the rush of getting them off because there's a crowd there or whatever, and the next match is on. They're filming and stopping. Next thing happens, you just see that a lot of them like kind of have their realization moment in the ring.
Yeah,
with all the cameras on.
Something we haven't mentioned as well, with this being in the middle of a pandemic, they did do this WrestleMania over 2 days.
Yeah.
Do you think it's something they should carry on doing in the future, or do you think it should be a one night show?
One.
I agree with one.
But I think they still need to shorten it, though.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You do not need to have everyone on the card, which is what they seem to try and do these days. If everyone's going to be on the card, what are people working towards? Like, WrestleMania is meant to be the biggest show of the year. And if you're just going to put everyone on the card, why are people working towards it?
Yeah, I know.
Same with like posters and DVD covers. I mean, I know people don't really buy DVDs anymore, but it's like when they put every wrestler on the DVD, like how are you making people want to like work towards that?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I just think like
it's like when Becky Lynch was on the cover of 2K20, even though the game isn't as good as it should be. It's a big deal because she was the first woman to like really feature the main character. I know you can say China was on the front cover as well, but China was kind of just like Triple H's sidekick at the time, whereas Becky Lynch is.
She was there for being her.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just think I feel like WrestleMania is far too long at the moment. I don't know if we feel like that because we have to watch it at like a ridiculous time.
Yeah, but we were there for SummerSlam 18. I know I probably say that every time we do a podcast, but that was a long show as well. We even missed the first match. Or maybe we missed the first 2 matches on the pre-show. I think we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
I thought we watched one match. How many matches on the pre-show?
3.
Oh yeah, we did actually.
Yeah, we missed the first 2 matches.
On the pre-show, yeah.
We saw Drew Gulak and Cedric Alexander, but I'm sure when we got into the arena, they were playing Rusev's music.
Yeah.
So we'd missed,
2.
And, we weren't late to the arena neither.
No. It was a long show. Yeah, I just think they definitely need to cut wrestling. I don't understand why they feel like they have to be so long. Do you know what I mean?
They think more is more, don't they?
Yeah, more is best, and it's not, is it? Anyway.
So next up, the showing Drew McIntyre's win over Brock Lesnar. Drew's just saying thank you.
I think he was talking about that normally when you win a title, you get your moment, you go back to your hotel room, and that's when it's quiet, there's nobody about, and you look down at the title, and you have that moment like, wow, like I've got this title, like I want it, and you get a bit emotional. He said he managed to have that in the ring, that special moment, because he didn't have that crowd, as I said earlier, he didn't have all that pressure, like the crowd and everything, so he sort of had a special moment in front of the cameras, which he normally has by himself in the hotel room. So that was really nice. And then, so he got to look at the camera and say, thank you to everybody because it meant so much to him to get this opportunity and to be this person.
Yeah, and then kind of, we're laughing at?
Nothing.
And then it kind of ends with Drew himself saying, same as like Bruce Pritchard said, this is be a mania that won't be forgotten.
Yeah.
And that was, that was it really. I was a bit disappointed that it didn't. I might have said this at the beginning of the podcast. I feel like it could have gone into detail more about how things changed and how they had to change things, why they had to change things, precautions that they were going to take.
How they're going to accommodate
they probably do
things.
have this footage, but they'll probably release it in a bloody series or something and
Yeah.
show the same thing in 10 episodes kind of thing.
But I do, like, I normally like these sort of
24 documentaries.
Yeah, the 24 documentaries that they do, and the 365. Like, they're very good at making these documentaries, and I'm often very interested in them.
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk about, Becky Lynch. You see her pull up in a truck. That was her entrance for WrestleMania.
I did actually think to myself, like, how much money these people got to, like, give her a truck for, like...
Well, that obviously they must have already sorted that out before.
You'd think so.
The pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So that
was... Well, we've got it.
Yeah.
Then what happens to that truck afterwards? That's the question. Like,
probably just paint over it.
As you said, like, Becky just got a truck with her face, like, driving up and down, like...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
She carry that newborn around with.
What else
she didn't need a minivan or whatever they have in America.
You don't know.
What they call this?
A minivan.
Yeah, but they call what they call them? Call them something, don't they? It's in the game plan, in the film where they're rocking that little girl.
Right.
Station wagon, that's what they call them, don't they? Is that what I think?
I thought it was called a minivan. Like
I'm sure they say because that woman, that posh tart in game plan is like, you drive a station wagon now.
Oh, I thought it was a minivan.
Yeah. Anyway. So I did think after watching this, like WrestleMania 37, I'd quite like to see a rematch of Ripley and Charlotte Flair.
That'd be good.
But like more of a darker Rhea Ripley in a way. I know this match, Rhea Ripley was the face, Charlotte Flair was the heel. I'm not saying I want it to be the other way around, but Rhea Ripley could be a bit darker, saying, you got lucky last year, but you're not going to get lucky this year.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever it takes to beat it, Charlotte Flair kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good rematch.
You got any?
I'd like to see a rematch of Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins.
Oh, really? At WrestleMania?
Maybe SummerSlam. I don't know. Just think, maybe with a crowd, I'd like to see that match. I think that would be a good match with a crowd. I feel like you don't agree with me.
No, I don't agree with you.
Right. Alright, well.
So yeah, have you got anything to add about the Show Must Go On 24 documentary?
No.
No? Well, that was a bit of a shorter podcast, probably just because the show didn't actually give us the details we thought we were going to be discussing. But thank you for listening anyway. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please like this video and subscribe to TheMan Games, and make sure you check out the other good content out on the channel. Thank you for watching The Man.
And the wife.
Or listening even to The Man.
And the wife.
Podcast show. Thank you.